Let's get back to it.
Bringing in Bischoff was a total surprise, but the following week's ratings were pretty good, according to Meltzer. He said last week's show with Eric Bischoff was a definite success, doing 4.2 rating off hours of 4.1 and 4.5. The show opened at a 3.7, which is higher than usual, and a sign that the previous week's episode, which was Bischoff's debut, got people talking. The next week, Dave would even follow up with, all the shows since Bischoff came back have been good and well received. Do you remember Vince being pleased with the ratings and the way the angle's coming off on TV?
Yeah, I think we all were, because we'd built up to it so much. This whole brand split and who the GMs were going to be. I will say this, that amongst us, there was a bit of a higher power kind of deflation on the SmackDown brand with Stephanie. We all wanted two new. If we could have had two Bischoffs, I don't know who that could have been, but if we could have had that at that time, that would have been ideal.
What about Paul Heyman?
Heyman was already there, so it
wouldn't
have had as much impact.
Yeah.
Right. We wanted both of them to be new and impactful.
Pardon the pun. Meltzer also had this warning. There may be forces behind the scenes working to screw over Eric Bischoff already. Some feel the only reason Vince brought him in was to humiliate him in the end. Can you respond to that allegation? And to be clear, that's not Meltzer saying that it was Vince's intention, but he is saying that there are some within the company who felt that way and indicated that to him. Did you ever remember any sort of rumblings amongst the office or the boys that the only reason he signed him is to embarrass his ass?
Oh, I think there's a lot of people in the rumor and innuendo department that would go with the conspiracy theory that, the only reason he's bringing him in is to bring him down. But no, that wasn't a fact, and it simply just wasn't true. He was bringing him in to help the ratings and to do something with him. And if we could use him to better the brand, then he was going to do that.
And there was no hype about the heat that Eric Bischoff had, man. He had creative issues with Jericho that caused him to leave, and ultimately we got Y2J, so roll tide on that. And he once threw coffee on Eddie Guerrero. Now, Bischoff would deny that, but Eddie told the same story every time. And he even fired Stone Cold Steve Austin by FedEx because Steve was hurt. I'm sure there were others on the list. Do you remember any conversations with those specific guys about Bischoff coming in, Bruce?
No. Everybody, it was a surprise for everybody as they came in. And like I said, everybody was professional and cordial with him. Again, they're on the winning side now, and he's coming in, he's coming into their house as a talent. He's not their boss. So there's real no reason to be confrontational or be an asshole in any way.
Let's talk about someone who we know didn't like Eric Bischoff coming in, and that's Ric Flair. They had a long, sordid history at WCW, and they're on good terms these days, and Bischoff has since apologized for the way he handled Rick in WCW. At one point, they were both suing each other, and Bischoff was even holding meetings in front of the boys, saying that Flair never drew a dime in the business, and that his new goal was to drive Flair into personal bankruptcy and ruin him. So even when Flair comes back several months later to WCW, these guys are not sending Christmas cards to one another. Do you remember having a conversation or talking to Rick about Bischoff coming back?
No, I didn't specifically at all. And, that may have been something Hunter might have, Stephanie may have, or Vince, but I did not. So I didn't know, again, Rick was professional, as everybody was, and no one outwardly came up to me and specifically said, hey, I've got a problem with this guy being here. I don't like him. He screwed me. He did this. I didn't have any of that. So if they did, they might have said it to somebody else, but not me.
Rick wrote in his book that his confidence was shot when he first started back with the company. And he even wrote, it seemed like I couldn't shake off the specter of Eric Bischoff. He later wrote, I just started to get a grip on my own talent. And then I saw Eric Bischoff walk through the dressing room at Continental Airlines in New Jersey. My heart sank. He says there was so much on my mind, however, I didn't know if I was ready to go walk through the curtain. He says that he had to have Brock calm him down, and keep in mind, Brock is a 24-year-old rookie who'd been on the road for 4 months, giving advice about how to handle this to the Nature Boy. Rick wrote, I had 1,000 reasons for never punching out Bischoff in WCW. He was an executive. I had dragged my family through one lawsuit, and I didn't want to get caught up in another, particularly one I would lose. But when I was alone, I'd think to myself, why didn't you just beat the shit out of him? And I blame myself for never doing it. Now he was in the WWE as a performer, no different than me or anyone else. I finally had my chance. Rick also writes that once Eric called him after 9/11 and tried to have a moment, but it just pissed Rick off even more. And he wrote, when he finally arrived in the WWE, I was forced to act cordial, and it killed me. Finally, I told myself, I've let him get away for too long. If I want to raise my boys to be men, it's about time I act like one. So on March 17th, 2003, Rick says he saw him in the dressing room talking to someone about Girls Gone Wild on his cell phone. And Rick wrote, I heard him use his classic cliche, it's taking on a life of its own. And that was it. Rick had had enough. He went to catering, got Arn, and asked him to follow him. Then he told Arn, please just watch the door, and didn't tell Arn anything else. So Rick makes the approach to Eric and says, I need to talk to you. Eric holds up one finger, telling Rick to wait. But Rick wrote, I had already waited too long, so I just slapped him as hard as I could across the face, knocking the cell phone out of his hand. He began backing up. I swung at him 3 times, but couldn't connect because he was moving so fast. When Bischoff got to the wall, I pushed him onto a couch, climbed on top of him, and pressed my finger against his eye and said, I could take your fucking eye out right now. I backed away so he could rise from the couch and said, let's go, right now. Then Rick kicked Eric in the leg, and suddenly Sergeant Slaughter was between them, and Eric said, I'm not going to fight you. Eventually, of course, Rick had to answer to Vince and explain himself. Vince wanted to know who else was involved and said this couldn't happen as long as he was on company property. It was unprofessional. He asked him if there was anybody else he was planning to attack, and Flair said Hogan. Vince said, please don't do that. Rick also wrote in his book that Eric tried to make peace several times since, saying things like, quote, life is too short. Rick responded by saying, he knows I'll never forgive him. Fuck no. Rick says in the weeks that followed, a number of guys came to him to tell him they wish they'd done the same thing to Eric back in WCW. Now, let's go to Eric Bischoff's book. He has a different account. He writes, of all the guys at WWE when I came over, Arn Anderson and Ric Flair were probably the only ones who were clearly not comfortable with me being there. But even they put it in their back pockets. Within a month, Rick and I were going out together and having a beer. Bruce, you were there. What happened? Because both of these accounts can't be true. Somebody's full of shit.
Well, they were going out in a month and having a beer, and as far as outwardly and between each other, they did put it in their back pockets, and they were cordial, and they did act professional, with the exception of the one incident in St. Louis. So, and I wasn't there for the incident in St. Louis. I was actually in Houston, and I got a phone call from Jerry Briscoe because I always produced all the stuff with Eric and Rick, and I was in Houston for some medical treatments, and I was going to St. Louis that night, and I knew that I had everything with Eric and Rick that night, and they had shit to produce together. And I got a phone call, and it was, well, your two boys are acting bad. I said, what happened? And he says, well, Eric and Rick got into a fight in the locker room. I don't know what happened. They're in with Vince now. Have fun. See you in a few. And I tried calling Rick. I tried calling Eric and got messages. So I jumped on a plane and got there. And when I arrived, I don't know that – I think they had gotten together with Vince and shook hands and everything was fine. But then I was told, well, you need to go get with Eric and Rick and go over the night. You know, nobody's had a chance to do that because of all the bullshit that happened earlier on in the day. I got them both in the dressing room in the back there in St. Louis, and both were as if nothing had happened. And I actually grabbed Rick first. I said, hey, Rick, everything cool? He says, yeah, I'm fine, man. It's over. Don't worry about it. I'm fine. And they walked in, got them together. We did business, and it was as if nothing had happened.
Did you know that this was going to happen at some point?
No, I didn't. I really didn't, because again, like I said, they were fine with each other in public.
Was there any heat on Rick or Arn afterwards?
I think that some people just kind of looked at it as a built up, that pent up emotion, and it was going to explode.
Just needed to get it over with.
It's like a pimple, man. It just needed to get out and move on.
Okay, time out. I know this is a sore spot, and it's probably not in my best interest to bring it up, but Rick wrote about this segment in his book, this whole backstage fiasco with Eric, and Eric has his account. And he says that Rick was throwing working punches and they weren't connecting. But even to this day, well, maybe not this day, but a few years ago, I asked Rick about it, and he kind of repeated the story from the book word for word. Shout out to Mark Madden for saving that book, by the way. Oh, and he's got a new podcast. If you're a Mark Madden guy, him and a friend of the show, Mike Mansouri, former WWE guy who's now with Pat McAfee. They've got a new wrestling pod if you want to check that out. Cheap plug for our boys over there. Yeah, I know they get along now, but I'm not sold on the fact that Rick has really forgotten. Maybe that's the old cliche, right? I'll forgive, but not forget. And I think that's probably where their relationship is now in 2021. I mean, I know even when I first told Megan that I was going to be doing a podcast with Eric, she was a little bit like, huh? Because, growing up in the Flair household, and well, she was already grown by then, but you know what I mean? She was like, wait a minute. The only thing I've ever heard from my dad about this is that this guy was a turd to my family, and you're doing what? But, let bygones be bygones. And Rick's in a place now where, he just wants everyone to be happy. And I think it's probably one of those forgive but not forget deals. And Rick, it can be honest and say, I've made mistakes in my life and blah, blah, blah. And I think Eric does too. Eric has acknowledged that if he had that to do over again, he would. And he regrets some of the decisions he made and some of the behavior. But the idea that what a spectacle this must be. There's a fight between Ric Flair and Eric Bischoff backstage. Doesn't that just sound preposterous? But, Rick's emotional. I think everybody knows that. I think here in Huntsville, he tried to get in a fight with Mick Foley once. Just maybe it says more about Rick and less about Eric. I'm not sure, but we joked earlier about Vince and Eric getting in a fight. I don't think anybody wanted to see Rick and Eric get in a fight. I don't think, let's take a pass on that. Let's get back to it.
Rick wrote about it in his book. Talk to me about Girls Gone Wild.
Girls Gone Wild was a project. Damn it. The guy that did Girls Gone Wild was a friend of Eric's.
Francis.
Yes. And they were doing a pay-per-view in wherever the hell it was, South Padre. So Eric had come to Vince and said, hey, here's this idea to do something with Girls Gone Wild and do kind of a co-promotion where we do the production and everybody participate in the promotion. Snoop Dogg was involved in it. And this is where, I don't think I've told this story before about Snoop Dogg and Kevin Dunn on the air, have I?
I'm not sure.
Well, we go down and it's essentially a WWE production that is doing the production of this live Girls Gone Wild competition in South Padre Island. And we've got a lot of different stars, probably the biggest one being Snoop Dogg. We have a lot of our production people down there. And Eric and I believe Jason Hervey might have been involved as well. They're also down there on the production side, writing this and being a big part of it. But the funniest story of it all, for those, everybody knows Kevin Dunn is the executive producer for WWE, and Kevin was the executive producer for this. And Snoop Dogg, they were all warned ahead of time that, listen, the cops are going to be out in force, no drugs. When we say no drugs, that means marijuana too. So apparently that's a drug. Apparently it's illegal in Texas. So the cops and the state troopers and all this shit had come in and said, hey, if we smell one damn joint, anything coming in, we're going to arrest people. And we see any underage people drinking, we're arresting them. This show's going to be done with. So Snoop shows up a couple hours late, rolls up, billows of smoke coming out of the limo and so on and so forth. And as the legend goes, Kevin Dunn is beside himself because Snoop has missed all the rehearsals. he's showing up. They're getting ready to go live, and Kevin is trying to explain to Snoop what he's got to do for that night, and Snoop is just standing there staring off into the distance, puffing on a cigar. And Kevin is getting madder and madder because Snoop won't acknowledge him. And finally, Snoop, without ever looking at him, goes, "Hey, motherfucker, just because I ain't looking at you don't mean I ain't hearing you. I got this shit." And fucking just walked off. But it was for the crew, the WWE crew guys that were there and witnessed it. 2 of them called me within 30 minutes of that happening because I was at home. I had nothing to do with the damn thing. And we're like, "Oh my God, the greatest fucking moment ever." And Snoop Dogg just punked out Kevin Dunn. And Eric was there, and Eric, would tell the story. But yeah, that was the Girls Gone Wild debacle that, I don't know if that made any money or not. Somebody did, not us.
Well, thank you for sharing. Hypothetically, how would Pat Patterson describe Girls Gone Wild?
At a base, they got the douchebag with the cunt, they got the flaps, and they're all hanging out there. And I thought, it's disgusting. And they got the boobies and the bouncy up and the down. It's the gross. I don't get it. Why the girl gone wild? Why don't they have the boy gone wild? I don't know. At a dedicated chase. Who the fuck wants to see that? Chases. Chocolate titties.
Oh gosh.
There's my new favorite saying. I'm just going to say that from now on.
Please don't. We need a t-shirt for that, but I don't want anybody to buy that actually. There's a story you told me once about a Tyson Tomko pre-tape with Eric Bischoff. And I know everybody right now is on the edge of their seats at the idea of getting a Tyson Tomko story. Can you share that with our listeners?
Well, this kind of goes to, you asked earlier about Eric being involved. Was there anything that he was doing is creative wise or behind the scenes? And Eric was strictly a talent, and Eric and I worked together. We did a lot of things, and there were 2 moments that I really got to see Eric Bischoff and got to know Eric. And one was in Saginaw, Michigan. I got some really, really bad news about 5 minutes before we were going live, and the live shot was with Eric, and I was in no condition to produce the spot with Eric, and Eric jumped in and just took over and did it. And it's something that got fucked up, something got left up. But I remember Eric standing up and taking the heat and going to Vince and covering for it. And I was like, all right, he's a good guy. And then there was an incident where Travis Tomko and he was doing a promo back and forth pre-tape with Eric, and we had it written one way, and it just wasn't working. And Eric had another way to do it. He pulled me off to the side, and he said, "What if you tried it this way?" And I said, "You know what? I'm going to do it." And we went live, and we did it, and everybody was told to wait in the room, and here comes Vince barreling into the room, which usually was not good. If he was coming in told everybody to wait, and he came in, and he comes up and says, "God damn it, that was great. So much better than what we had written. Bruce, God damn it, good job." I said, "You know what? It wasn't me. It was Eric." And that was the moment that I think Eric felt he could trust me. And that's where everything kind of changed, where we just kind of became kind of bonded at that point. But he pulled me off to the side, had a suggestion. I used it. It worked. Loved it. And then we moved on from there. But it was just kind of that turning point that you always remember.
Can you think of any other stories where you were producing segments or skits or bits or whatever with Eric that really stand out as being memorable, or one specific moment where you earned his trust? I ask that and I phrase it that way because wrestling historically breeds a lot of paranoid people who think that everybody's out to bury somebody or something.
I think, once we got to that Tomko thing and he knew that I wasn't going to take credit for his stuff, or I wasn't one of those guys that's going to go around and go, "Oh, that was my idea." I'd give credit where credit was due. And I was also the guy that had to tell him, "Hey, that was a good job. That was a bad job." And especially after we would go live, if we'd shit the bed, you got to address it afterwards. And I just think that we, after a very short period of time, got to the point where there was a trust there, and he didn't have his guard up, didn't think I was out to fuck him and I wasn't going to do anything to bury him, that I was just trying to get the best product out. And it just became easier when you have that trust. It's like Steve Austin. We would discuss something, and he may not agree with it, but if I felt really strongly about it, he was good enough with me that he would go, okay, I'll do it. And, it just takes time with talent. It didn't take as long with Eric, but it took a little time.
All right, let's bounce around a little bit and talk about some specific moments. Let's talk about September 2nd, 2002. This is the episode of Raw where Eric Bischoff just creates a new world title. It's actually the old WCW world title, and he just handed it to Triple H on Raw. It became named the World Heavyweight Championship. That's what Bischoff called it anyway, and they still used it that way for years and years to come. And this all comes on the heels of Triple H earning a shot at Brock Lesnar's Undisputed Championship. But since there's a brand split and Lesnar was on SmackDown, this is a way to get some heat on Triple H and do some heel stuff here with Bischoff and get a world title on Raw. Do I have that right, Bruce?
Yeah, it sucked.
I was hoping you would say that. This feels like something that a lot of old school wrestling guys wouldn't like the idea of just creating a title and then handing it to a guy, right?
He didn't win anything, and I get it. He's a heel, and that was the idea behind it, that because he's a heel and Eric's a heel, if he just hands it to him, he'll have more heat because he didn't win it. I wasn't in favor of having another world champion. I like the idea of the undisputed champion, and I like the idea of people competing on both shows to face the world champion and only having one world champion. And that died quickly. It became, well, you got to have two world champions that want to be undisputed champion. Okay. Then you're Universal champion, but now you're Universal on SmackDown. I don't know what the fuck they are now. But I just thought it watered down the championships. If you have an undisputed champion, that should be the championship everybody's going for. But if you kept all the titles and then you create another world title, just watered it down, and then the first guy that is the champion didn't win it. Thought it sucked. It sucked, goddammit.
Who championed the belt to be the old WCW Big Gold Belt? Do you recall?
I think it was simply because it was there. We already got a world championship. Use that belt. I really think it was that simple.
Huh. Sometimes we think there's more to it than that, but not always the case. September was a busy month because the next week, Eric Bischoff promised HLA, and the crowd looked puzzled. Well, it turns out HLA stands for Hot Lesbian Action. Yes, that was actually something the WWE promoted and teased for ratings. The entire show was used to hype the possibility of seeing two lesbians have sex live on Raw. They even used that term, Hot Lesbian Action, 63 times on the show. Eventually, the lesbians, who are actually two indie workers from UPW, come out, and Eric tells them that sex and violence sell, and that they should remove some clothing. So they do, and start kissing. Eric says something like, "This is plenty of sex, but not nearly enough violence," and the girls look confused. So Eric says this segment has gone 3 minutes too long. This brings out Rosie and Jamal. The big guys going by the name 3 Minute Warning, and they destroy the women. Bruce, whose idea is this? You could never do this today. The combination of the hot lesbian action and teasing the live sex and then beating up women like this. Any other memories about specifics of walking through this angle and this idea?
All right, time out. Serious business. If you're watching wrestling and someone in your life who doesn't watch wrestling comes in the room and they see some of this hot lesbian action shit from the TV show, would you not just be mortified? Like, it's so weird to look back at this stuff sort of out of context, Because for whatever reason at the time, as crazy and as over the top as it was, it didn't seem nearly as like, as it does now. And I don't know. I don't know what that says about us as society or wrestling. And, you know, whenever I talk to people who booked some of this crazy stuff, they would always say, well, you know, wrestling was just a reflection of where society was at the time. Thank God we're not doing stuff like this anymore. You know, now the ladies are wrestling in main events. You know, we had a women's Hell in a Cell and we had a women's TLC and all that type of stuff. But the idea that this was where we were, I do think it's unfair sometimes that, you know, because the on-screen character, Eric Bischoff, is the person who trotted that out. That wasn't Eric's idea. Although we did try to produce a Girls Gone Wild pay-per-view. Yeah, moving on.
No.
Are you okay?
Yeah. This is one of those moments where I sometimes say, be careful what you suggest in a meeting because it may just end up being the final segment on Raw next week. We were discussing what is something so outlandish out there that we could do that you just can't look away. What does every guy want to watch? Porn.
Oh my. Oh my.
But it was
goodness.
It got into, well, I like watch two girls. Well, it's better than watching two guys to some people.
Okay.
So it was, God damn, yes. Hot lesbians. Yes. Lesbians making out. Lesbian sex live on TV. And then we're all feeding into this. What if? Oh my God! What if we had two chicks making out, and then they start like just groping each other, and then out of the blue, here comes Rosie and Jamal, and they just squash them. Next thing you know, shit you not, Rose, can you find two working lesbians?
Oh my gosh!
Like, well, yeah, definitely. I know where to find some. One call.
So
go ahead and ask me where I called.
Where did you call?
Lesbians are us.
I didn't want to set that up, but I knew that's what everybody at home was waiting on. So catch me up. True or false? You found these ladies at Heartbreakers.
False.
I mean, I know you didn't. I know you found them in California, but were these, I'm embarrassed for us right now.
Were they lesbians? No.
Were these lesbians?
No, they were not.
I just wanted to say shoot lesbians.
I know you did. I know you're tickled with that right now.
Shoot lesbian.
I wish I could do it. I can't do a Conrad Thompson imitation.
Well, you just say roll Tide on that.
Roll Tide. Okay. No, they weren't shoot lesbians. They were a couple workers from Southern California. Called and said, hey, would you guys be interested in doing this? Would you guys mind making out on screen and then getting squashed? They're like, okay, hey, yeah, cool. They were friends. One of them was married.
Apparently they were friends. Okay, so let's play a little what if for a minute here. I know that you were the one who sourced these lesbians. What a random thing to say out loud on our show here. But hypothetically, if Jerry Jarrett had been tasked with lining these ladies up, what might that sound like?
Huh? Well, you know, Ben, well, honey, what we'd like you to do is, well, you take your hand and you put it on her, and then you give like a little squeeze, and then with your tongue, you place it inside of her, and then when it gets moist, and then from there, and you grab, and then you start to, and you get excited. oh God, oh wait, and then the Samoans squash you, huh?
Something like that. You know.
Evidently, at the live show, parents left with their kids in droves before this segment happened. And the rumor is that almost everyone hated it. The boys, the office, the live fans there, but most of all TNN, who released a statement the next morning. TNN takes serious issue with the content of Monday night's WWE Raw episode and has expressed its deep concern to the WWE. We don't condone the content of this episode and will work diligently to ensure that similar occurrences do not again appear on our network. Do you remember the TNN statement, and did Vince have a reaction to this?
Fuck 'em.
Okay.
People want HLA.
Meanwhile, Meltzer wrote, Vince loved HLA and thinks he's hit the next big thing, just like in 1998. I am not making this up. They're already asking for design tips on WWE.com to create new HLA t-shirts. Was this a rib?
Well, I don't recall that. Vince did love it. He was definitely in the minority.
What would Vince say to defend this idea?
God damn, what the hell are you trying to tell me? That it's okay for a man and a woman to kiss and show their affection, but two beautiful, voluptuous women can't show their affection for one another because they're hot and they're lesbians? You're going to discriminate? What kind of world do we live in when we cannot celebrate hot lesbian action and chocolate titties? Wrong story. You asked.
Did anybody try to talk Vince out of this?
Yes. Kind of falls on deaf ears. When he makes his mind up, and probably the more that people try to talk him out of something, the more determined he will become to actually see it through and do it in spite of everyone.
And
he did. I mean, it just, man, he's going to make it happen. He's going to do it. You think Katie Vick is in poor taste? I'll show you.
Well, since we're doing it, another pretty famous story we should cover, also from September. This one actually happens on September 12th, 2002. Man, September 2002 should be a poll topic. Well, we got to do that this September for the 15-year anniversary. Anyway, we're going to talk about the wedding of Billy and Chuck, and I'm sure we'll cover this thing in the future, long form, but here's the gist of it for now. After the invasion, these guys start tagging, and they sort of tease that they were more than just tag team partners. They dressed alike, one of them wore pigtails, and they got Rico as a personal stylist. Then in September, Chuck proposed a life partnership to Billy, and Billy accepted. Their ceremony was to take place on September 12th on SmackDown. During the ceremony, they admit that this has all just been a publicity stunt and that they're straight. The priest then did the old, did somebody say 3 minutes bit, and this gets 3-minute warning out to put the beat down on Chuck and Billy. In my opinion, Bruce, this is one of the better produced segments of the year that you guys did in 2002. Don't you agree with that?
Oh, hell yeah. It was tremendous because I remember we snuck Eric into the building that day and put him in a separate dressing room with the special effects people to put all the old man makeup on him. And those that didn't know, first of all, seeing Eric there wasn't out of the ordinary. You know, people, maybe he was there doing pre-tapes or whatever. So he went in, and if someone happened to wander in to that dressing room where the special effects people were, Eric had the voice affected, and he just kept that voice going. He walked around backstage. No one knew who the hell he was. And no one knew. No one knew that was Eric until he ripped off the prosthetics in the ring. that was cool. That was a great job by them.
All right, timeout. Listen, in hindsight, I think this Billy and Chuck wedding feels a little bit like HLA, like we're trying to push the envelope in a way where maybe we shouldn't. You know, these days, I don't think it would be nearly as big of a deal. It wouldn't have been nearly as controversial. It wouldn't have been presented nearly the same way. But the actual execution of the segment, Eric says to this day, it's the greatest moment he's ever had in wrestling. Like the build and the feeling and just the energy for that whole performance. And you think about that, that's a tall statement. I mean, this is a guy who was in the ring when the NWO was getting trash thrown everywhere. And, you know, he main evented a pay-per-view and he wrestled Ric Flair at Starrcade. There's lots of silly things he was involved with, but a lot of, you know, really important monumental stuff too. But to peel that makeup off, I mean, that's like right out of a movie, right? So as much as we look back and sort of say, ugh, this Billy and Chuck angle, this was not good stuff. The execution here of the 3 minutes, that was pretty badass. And I wish we had more of that. I mean, well, maybe not the first part. You know what I mean? Let's get back to it. Oh, but before we do, where do you rank that segment? Like in terms of a surprise? You know, we talked earlier about what a big surprise it was when Eric showed up. I don't think that this is in the same category of a surprise, like a big debut or something like that, but I didn't see it coming. I mean, I remember watching that show and I had no idea that was Eric Bischoff. I don't think I could have guessed. Be honest. Did you know that was Eric Bischoff when the segment started? Tell the truth. I don't think you did. I didn't see it coming. Let's get back to it.
Go look it up if you haven't seen this. It's the September 12th edition, 2002. You can probably just Google it or find it on the network. It's the Billy and Chuck wedding. Do you have any memories of, you know, how it was received afterwards? Like when the guys come back through the curtain, this feels like something everybody would have been high fives all around. This was a home run, was it not?
Oh, big time. Yeah, big time. Because again, nobody understood no one knew that was Eric underneath there. It was the same people actually that did the Mrs. Doubtfire movie that did it. And we had Eric go in and get fitted for the mask beforehand and all that shit. And they did a tremendous, tremendous job on him.
What did Eric think of this bit and the way it came off?
Loved it. And Eric's one of those guys that loves to fool people. He likes to have that shock and surprise. So the fact that he was able to pull it off and that even the boys didn't know, that was a big plus.
It's worth mentioning that Glad, Glaad, had consulted with the WWE on this segment and skit and angle, and even helped promote it to help get more media coverage for the company. After this airs, though, they were not happy and released a statement that said that the WWE lied to them 2 months ago when they were promised that Billy and Chuck would come out and then wed on the air. How in the world did you guys get Glad on board? Who pitched it? And then who decided to hit them with the swerve, bro?
I don't know who pitched it, but they were on board. And again, they didn't lie to anybody. The idea was that they were going to come out at the last minute. Vince changed his mind. And
things changed, Conrad.
Yeah, things change, but he just changed his mind at the last minute and decided, no, it was just a big hoax. And sometimes it's like dropping a storyline right in the middle of it with no explanation and no ending, and guys just move on. Vince can be funny about shit like that. Nobody cares. Next. They're straight now, damn it.
What was the payoff supposed to be?
Well, the payoff was supposed to be for them to actually get married at one point and to go back and for them to be out characters and for them to be tag team champions and go on and all this other stuff. But it all centered around, I think where Vince had the hang up was that then they're married, figuratively and literally on TV as a tag team. And he thought that both guys could be singles as well and didn't want to pigeonhole them into a tag team and into the gay married couple. So I think that's where the cold feet came in. once he got close to it, he didn't see that, but he saw HLA. More HLA. Less gay wedding.
We've had a lot of fun with this over time, and I don't want this to be something we make light of. What did Pat Patterson think about this angle? I mean, is this something he's on board with, or is this something that he's opposed to, or do you know how he felt about this?
I don't think he had opinion one way or the other about it.
Okay.
I don't remember discussing it with him.
Is there anybody in the company who's kind of saying, hey, we need to pump the brakes on this if we're not going to go all the way with it?
Well, there was no, he didn't change his mind till the very last minute. So there wasn't really, we all thought we were going with it until at the last minute he decided, nah, we don't need to go there. And we just changed mid-course. So it wasn't like a, whoa horse. It was pretty much full steam ahead and then left turn.
And nobody had a problem with this storyline or angle. Billy, Chuck, none of the writers, none of the boys, nobody says, hey, I don't know about this.
In the beginning, I think there was a little hesitation, but the guys were all on board with it. So they were cool with it.
All right. So let's skip ahead now to January of 2003. The company has worked things out for Austin to return. This comes several months after he walked out on the company back in 2002. So in storyline, Eric Bischoff is the Raw GM, and he's invited Austin to come give his side of the story for walking out on Vince McMahon. And Bischoff is doing this to try to appease the Mr. McMahon character. He also invites Austin to the No Way Out pay-per-view, which is their next big show in February. The next week, Bischoff says that Austin has agreed to tell his story and his side of things in the brand new Raw magazine. A week later, Bischoff decides he needs to sign Austin to impress Vince and not let him go to SmackDown. So in an effort to keep him on Raw, he actually heads to Texas intent on signing Austin, but he can't find him. This is fun stuff, and it aired on the February 3rd edition of Raw if you want to go check it out on the network. Frustrated, Bischoff fires Jim Ross the next week on Raw and blames him for Austin not coming back. Of course, Jim Ross being the real life friend and confidant of Stone Cold. McMahon is disappointed that Austin hasn't signed yet, and this all leads to Austin having a match with Eric Bischoff at the No Way Out pay-per-view on February 23rd in Montreal. Kind of a fun card, because this is the same card where you get the Triple H Scott Steiner match that people still talk about, and another Rock Hogan match. Bruce, what are your memories of this Let's Sign Austin angle? This feels like something you would have helped produce or shoot with this stuff in Texas.
I did. I shot all that stuff down in Bandera, and it was a blast because there were so many elements to this thing that, Vince and Austin had met in, I believe, San Antonio or Austin, one of the two. I think it was San Antonio. Might have been in Houston. Fuck, I don't know. They met in Texas. And Steve agreed to come back. He's coming back. Eric's the GM. There was a lot of the rumor and innuendo and the conspiracy theorists that were talking that, oh my God, Eric fired Steve. There's a lot of heat there. Steve hates Eric. So it's the first time that Eric Bischoff and Steve Austin will be together. Now, obviously, Steve wasn't on camera in any of those vignettes, but Steve lived in Bandera, and we were going to Bandera to shoot all this stuff, and I'd asked Steve to help out, set up a lot of the locations that we were going to shoot in. And I wanted to get Steve together to talk to Steve about the angle and to talk about what we had planned for him going forward and to get him together with Eric. So I remember calling Vince and going, hey, is Steve cool with Eric? He says, why wouldn't he be? I said, well, Eric fired him. It's a famous deal. I said, I think Steve would be cool with him because, goddamn, it's the best thing that ever happened to Steve. He said, he's fine. He loves the idea, so on and so forth. But before you guys shoot anything, you may want to meet with Steve, get together with Steve, and get he and Eric together. So when I got there, we met at the Silver Dollar Bar Room. I think that's what it's called, in Bandera, Texas. Went down. Steve was there, and I went in and talked to Steve. And the conversation lasted all of about 30 seconds. Hey, Steve, he said, I don't know if there's any heat there. And I goes, God damn, kid. Greatest thing ever happened to me. I wouldn't have fucking, took off like I did if I hadn't been fired and been able to come here and do my thing. He and Eric met, shook hands, went and sat in a booth, talked for a while, hugged. Everything was great. And then we went on to shoot these vignettes all over the place. And part of it was everywhere that Eric went, Eric would have a few beers. I would have a few beers. By the end of the night, and we literally did all of those damn vignettes in one night until roughly 4 o'clock in the morning, traveling all over down there in Bandera. But good God, it was so much fun dealing with real locals, and all that stuff was just real people that were in the bars, real people that were in the restaurant. The rancher that owned that big ranch that we went to at the very end that we said was Steve's, we just used the caretaker that was there and did shit by the seat of our pants. And I think that's why it came off so campy. I thought they were great. I thought they were a lot of fun. And I thought they were great, but it was a lot of fun shit.
Let's talk about Taboo Tuesday 2004. We're going to cover this show in long form sometime. But I want to do a whole show about Eugene too. The story here is that Eugene is Eric Bischoff's nephew, and Bischoff was picking on poor Eugene, and eventually this leads to a match. And the concept behind Taboo Tuesday was that the fans voted on what would happen, much like we do here on this show. Eugene would beat Bischoff in the match, and then the fans voted for Eric to have his head shaved. Bruce, there's lots to discuss here, so we'll do one at a time. Whose concept was Taboo Tuesday?
That would have been Vince's concept, to be able to integrate the internet and allow people to participate live, if you will. You can't have them participate in the outcome of things, but you can participate in match stipulations, and he was intrigued by that.
Was the voting a shoot all the time, or do you remember gimmicking one here or there?
The actual votes were 100% shoot. How we would gimmick it was simply, you're going to put the obvious choice out there, and then you're going to load it up with, 3 other dogs.
But there wasn't some sort of manipulation where you guys have some sort of off-site voting mechanism to fuck with it?
No, never.
Okay. Any idea about who created the Eugene character?
The Eugene character was created from, there was a young man in Pittsburgh named Eugene who was challenged. He great kid. His dad, Bucky, would always come and help set up the rings, and Eugene would be like the jacket boy in Pittsburgh. And he used to come and hang out in the back, and all the boys loved him, but he was the most pleasant, fun kid to be around. And when I say a kid, he was probably in his early 20s, but his dad, and he started out probably about 15, that his dad would bring him around, and that just made his life to be able to be a part of the boys, to be able to hang out with them, and everybody loved Eugene. And that's where we got the name Eugene for Nick Dinsmore, for him to be Eugene. But that was a Vince character.
Chat me up about Nick Dinsmore. Was he comfortable with the character? Was there ever anything that he was asked to do that he didn't like, or any sort of ideas that you guys floated that got shot down?
Not shot down. They might have gotten pulled back sometimes, just not to go too far, because that's a sensitive subject. And, never ever wanted to refer to anybody as a retard or retarded or anything like that. That's just a complete no-no. And there was often a tendency for a heel to go there. It's like, absolutely not. No, man, you can't go there. And Nick embraced it, man. Nick got into it, and he had fun with the character. And once we got into that character just being fun and innocent, which were the attributes of Eugene, the real human being, and we went off of that, the character became really easy to write for and to have fun with.
How did he feel about it? He was comfortable?
Yeah, I think he was comfortable with it. Definitely.
Did the company take any significant heat for the character that you know of from outside sources or activists or anything like that?
Not that I can remember. I do, again, in the very beginning, everybody was just very sensitive of what not to do. And we didn't want to come across as being insensitive. As a matter of fact, we wanted to make Eugene the hero on all of this. So there was just a lot of extra sensitivity to it. But Dinsmore, great worker, great guy, and he played the part to a T.
How would Eric react to having his head shaved here? Would there have been anything that was on this Taboo Tuesday list that he would have not wanted to participate in as far as a match stipulation, or was he super cool with getting his head shaved?
I think it was Eric's idea to do the head shave.
Somewhere around this time, you and Eric get to be pretty close friends, and they'll actually decide to vacation together. Tell us that story.
Well, no, it's again, you hear all the negative shit about Eric Bischoff and just what an asshole and horrible human being he is, the devil reincarnated. He was WCW's version of the evil Vince McMahon. But again, you talk about getting to know somebody. The very first vacation that my wife and I got to have after she was diagnosed with cancer, and she'd gone through her treatments, and we had gone 3 years or whatever it was without any vacations, without being able to leave home or do anything. And Eric arranged for our very first vacation away, and we got to spend a week in Cave Creek. And he had this prized Mustang. It was like it was a vintage Mustang, old timey cars. I don't know shit about cars, but he loved this damn car, and he let me use it as transportation for a week while I was in Cave Creek. And it had no air conditioning. And if you can imagine no air conditioning in Cave Creek, Arizona, it was hot as fuck. But the worst part is I left it not running in the parking lot of the little rancho where we were. And there was Eric and his son, Garrett, trying to get this damn car running again. So I killed his classic car inside of a week that he prized and loved so much. And after 1 week with Bruce, I killed it.
Well, there you go. Bischoff killed it in his 2 segments that, we got lots of questions about. I had it in my notes, but we got a ton of tweets about it. The time that Eric Bischoff kissed Linda and the time that Eric Bischoff kissed Stephanie, this feels like a psychiatrist's dream to book your former arch nemesis, arch rival to make out with your wife and daughter. Let's hear about it.
I was there for the Stephanie kiss. Vince produced the Linda kiss at his house in Linda's little office there at the house.
So they're really in the McMahon household when that's going on.
Yes.
What does that do? I mean, you weren't there for that one.
I was not there for that one, but I talked to Eric about it, and he was so uncomfortable. Just because Vince being Vince. And
by the way, we should mention this happened on August 18th, 2003. If you'd like to go find the Raw, it's like a 6-minute segment. It's August 18th, 2003. Anyway, didn't mean to cut you off. Continue.
No, he just was so uncomfortable and felt so weird being in their house and then having to grab Linda and be a little physical with her and kiss her. And Vince producing it. Hey, you gotta go in and you gotta put one on her. It's awkward. It's awkward. I think I would be awkward in that same situation.
Who kissed Linda more times in 2003, Vince or Eric?
Well, that day?
The year?
I don't know.
Let's talk about the Stephanie McMahon kiss. This feels like something that we've talked about before, of course, in the Kurt Angle episode in our archives. You gave a hilarious rendition of what you thought that sounded like, but I'm sure you have a totally different story here. Tell us about the time that Bischoff had to kiss Stephanie.
Well, here the tables were reversed because Stephanie was completely repulsed by Eric. And first of all, she hated the idea and she hated the experience. So that in and of itself makes it more fun.
Sure. She sold it.
Oh. She tried not to sell it, but by trying so hard not to sell it, she sold it big time. So she kind of caught on to, let's rehearse that one more time. Let's go ahead and run through that one more time. And I was doing a Stephanie on her, which, she would always have guys do things over and over and over. That was good, but let's try one more.
Were you smiling ear to ear, or were you trying to play it straight?
I played it straight, man.
Yeah.
100%.
Well, let's hear about it. This actually happens, if you want to go find it, on October 31st, 2002. And this sounds make-believe even talking about it, but describe what they're wearing when this happens.
Well, Stephanie is wearing a witch outfit. That's witch, WITCH.
How does she look?
Hot.
What?
No, I'm sorry. What are you looking for here? She looked hot. She looked good.
Her chest is very exposed.
Her bosom.
And this is a Halloween episode, of course. It's airing on Halloween 2002. And so she's in I guess you would call it a slutty witch outfit. That's probably the way this was sold at the Party City outfit where she bought this thing. And it
was an outfit out of her closet.
I'm sure it was. And I'm sure she rode her own broom to taping that day. And she's falling out of her top. Her cups runneth over. She walks into the room with this little outfit and this hat, and she sees a man in a pinstripe suit. And what else is interesting about this man in the pinstripe suit?
It's her father. Well, it's actually someone in a Vince McMahon mask.
Let this sink in. The daughter comes in to a locker room where their gimmick's hanging out on Halloween and starts talking to her dad. And her dad's mask comes off and there's the big reveal. It's actually Eric Bischoff dressed up like her dad. She tries to hit him. He pulls her close and
bends her over for the big smooch.
And she fights it, but then by the end, she's into it.
And gives in and does the arms around him. And yeah, it was great.
And then they actually collapse on a desk in a heap and then get up and wipe their faces and stare at each other.
And that's it. And out.
And the concept here being, these are the opposing general managers. One is a McMahon, one is Bischoff. The Bischoff was dressed like her dad. Is this one of the weirdest segments in the history of wrestling?
Yes.
Who wrote it?
That was SmackDown, right?
Yep.
So
don't act like Vince didn't write this. Vince wrote this.
No, I think I might have.
Oh, you did it just to get heat with Stephanie. No wonder.
No. It fit the storyline at the time. Vince might have helped. Vince might have taken it, a little further than, but I think it was my idea to have the two in there at the same time in the Vince mask and all that shit.
Do you think when she was dressed in the witch outfit, she cursed your WWE career?
I never thought about that, Conrad.
Hypothetically speaking, was Vince in the room when this kiss happens?
Yes.
What was his reaction? What did he think?
Oh, God, yes. I can't. I can't. No.
What?
Yes, God, yes.
The only way it would have been better.
Get you some, pal. Yeah.
What?
You know, white chocolate is a thing.
It is white, creamy.
You've been saying this is your favorite thing the whole show, and now you're just going to leave me hanging?
Yeah.
Okay.
White chocolate, Teddy.
Oh my gosh. We're really reaching here. On the way to One Night Stand 2005, we were treated to a phenomenal Paul Heyman promo, where we have both Vince McMahon and Eric Bischoff in the ring with him. It's on YouTube if you'd like to look it up. It's Paul Heyman invites Eric Bischoff to ECW One Night Stand. Bruce, how much of this segment was scripted, and was anybody legitimately hot about it? Because Heyman feels like he's shooting here, which means it was probably all agreed upon beforehand. But when I was at home watching this, it was like, oh my gosh.
All scripted, and everybody was cool with it, man. They all contributed to the writing, so that's what makes it so good.
What'd you think of the segment?
Thought it was tremendous. Because, again, it was from everybody's viewpoint. That was their real viewpoint, how they really felt at the time. So it worked. I mean, it was real. You felt it was real. Everybody felt it was real. And it was in its own way.
Go check it out if you haven't already. It's on YouTube. Paul Heyman invites Eric Bischoff to ECW One Night Stand. In early December 2005, Stephanie calls Eric to say they want to do an angle with him. She says, "You're going to overreact to this thing and think it's really bad, but it's not. We really like working with you. You're a great performer. We have every intention of keeping you on. This is not the end of your contract. We are not going to close your deal." Bruce, those are famous last words, are they not?
Well, we didn't close his deal. We just were writing him off TV. He still got paid for his deal.
Bruce,
and the intention was to actually bring him back at some point, but we needed to give him a rest.
Bischoff wrote in his book, Brian Gerwitz was a great guy, and he's kind of a nervous little character. He tiptoes around a lot. Brian called me about it, and he was kind of tentative. He said, "Take a look at it. If you have any concerns, we'll talk about it." I thought that was an interesting description of Brian. Would you agree with the way Eric described him?
Accurate. Brian listens to this show, you know.
Well, we're not burying him. We're reading.
I just said, I agree with him on it tremendously. Brian it can be somewhat timid. I mean, he grew up a lot before our very eyes. And at first he was very, anti-confrontational.
Yeah.
Yeah. But by the end, man, he'll get in your face. If something he believes in, man, he'll fight for it.
Bischoff wrote, "I got the script and I thought it was funny as hell. They had to get my character off the air to give it a rest. I'd been doing the GM role for 3.5 years. For all that time, I'd been the evil dictator who was angry at the babyface performer because he wasn't giving me my respect. It was the underlying premise of every single angle I was in. He thought it was time to give the character a rest and an overhaul, so they worked this angle out for a few weeks, and then Vince decides to have his fate decided in a kangaroo court of sorts, and Bischoff is fired. So John Cena, the super babyface, gives him the F5 into the back of a garbage truck." Bruce, whose idea was this angle and who thought of the trial? That's kind of fun because we fans have always heard about Wrestler's Court, but who puts the twist on there of a garbage truck?
Probably a combination, remembering back, of Brian and Vince, just kicking ideas back and forth. And how do we get there? And how can we have some fun and be able to draw this thing out throughout the night? And that's how the court pre-tapes came up. Just to have some fun with it and do a mock. You know, you always see that shit all the time on TV, and you go to this point, and then when we return, you know, you see so-and-so walking up to testify. And that was the idea, to draw it out through the entire episode.
In his book, Bischoff wrote that the garbage truck had been steam cleaned to the point you could have performed surgery in there, and that they welded a couple of steel stops to keep it from crushing him. So once he's in the back, Vince hops in the driver's seat and takes off. And that's the end of Bischoff as GM. How did you think the segment came off, and what did everybody think of it once it was in the can?
I think everybody was happy with it. It was good. It was, the one and only time I think they've had a garbage truck do something like that inside the arena. So it was unique in and of itself, but it worked.
Bischoff notes in his book that Vince ran over some cables on his way out, and the bumps bounced Eric's face around and into a compactor, creating a 3-inch gash on his face. So when Vince gets out and sees him, he asks, "Oh my God, are you all right?" And since there were fans around, Bischoff stays in character the entire time, yelling at Vince. Do you remember this particular gash? Did you guys just stitch him up in the back? Was there any concern for him at that point, or was he okay?
Yeah, he was okay.
Okay, what say you? Would you have sent the Eric Bischoff character out of WWE in the garbage truck? Was that the proper way to send him off? I mean, I get that you want to have some storyline arcs and you want to have a payoff, and that one feels like it goes all the way back to WCW. But would you have booked it differently? I know conventional wrestling would say, oh, well, he should have had a match and lost a match and been loser leaves town. But with a non-wrestling persona like this, I mean, the match probably would have been more spectacle, right? It would have been more sizzle and less steak. So maybe why not just camp it up and do something like this? But would you have had security escort him out, or I don't know. Is there another form of a humiliating exit? I don't know. But I am happy that we're finally getting what's well overdue. Eric Bischoff in the WWE Hall of Fame. And shout out to Molly Holly, who was also announced as going in as part of this 2021 class. I don't have any inside information, but I guess they're going to do the inductions for both 2020 and 2021 at the same time. Last year was such a weird year, but I'm glad that those guys are getting their moment in the sun. And I'm glad that you guys happened to join us here to sort of celebrate Eric's big day and his induction into the WWE Hall of Fame. It's funny because I just looked at the calendar the other day and I was talking to Shuli Agar, who's got a new podcast. You may know that name from the Howard Stern show. But he's got the Shuli Show. It's a brand new podcast you can enjoy anywhere you find your podcasts. And we just talked about, we did a super show 2 years ago about this same time. Bruce had just been announced as going back to work for WWE. And we were doing a super show with Bruce Prichard and Eric Bischoff. And originally it was supposed to be a part of a wrestling convention at the Mohegan Sun in Connecticut. And for whatever reason, the convention fell through, but we had already sold a bunch of tickets for our show. It wound up being our biggest show. I think there were, north of 1,500 fans there, maybe 1,700 fans. The biggest live podcast we had ever done. It was huge. And there was such energy in the crowd that night because we were just getting rolling with the Eric Bischoff show. We'd had a lot of fun with it. And now, with Bruce, obviously Something to Wrestle was still something to wrestle. But he was going back, and it just felt like a really cool celebration that, he had been gone for so long and felt like he didn't have the closure he needed. And now he's back. So it was just a really cool night. It was a big crowd. It was rowdy. It was fun. It was exciting. It felt like something big was happening, and it did. But God dang, man, with COVID, that feels like that was 5 years ago. It doesn't feel like it was 2 years ago. We've had such a journey on this podcast, and I'm disappointed that we had to do a remix again today, and I know you are too, but it's so fun that we get to pay homage to our great pal, Eric Bischoff. If you haven't already, check out his podcast every Monday here on Westwood One. It's 83 weeks. You can find it anywhere you enjoy podcasts. Of course, you get all these shows early and ad-free over at adfreeshows.com, and you can even do some live Q&As and Zooms and things like that with Eric Bischoff. He's very, very active there. Our topic this coming week is going to actually be paying tribute to the former Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig. And then the following week, so 10 days from now? Yeah. We're going to be covering the Big Bang. Like, what would the relaunch of WCW have looked like? Because I can't believe this is real. But next week is the 20-year anniversary of the very last Nitro, which coincidentally we talk about with Arn next week. So if you haven't already, check out Eric's show. Got some really fun stuff coming there. But once again, man, congratulations to Eric Bischoff. I know he and his wife, Lori, are thrilled that he's finally getting that long overdue hardware and going into the WWE Hall of Fame. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.